and welcome to a very special episode of Philomena.com. I have the honor today to have my guest be the newest U.S. Ambassador to Liberia, Ambassador Mark Toner. Thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you. It's really wonderful to be here.
There's so much excitement around your arrival, a lot of questions. So today we're going to let the viewers know a little bit about you.
Sure.
And what your dreams and aspirations for your time here in Liberia.
Okay.
All right, so
Look
let's get
forward
into
to
it.
Yeah. Let's do it.
So can you tell the viewers a little bit about your background and how you came to be the U.S. Ambassador to Liberia?
Sure. I grew up in Pennsylvania, outside of Philadelphia. We were just talking about this before we started this interview. I got interested in foreign affairs and traveling. I was thinking about this before I came here. It really was my older sister who was almost like a second mother to me. She was like, we was 16, big Irish Catholic family, but she studied abroad. One of her, I think, junior year in college, and I was like 6 or 7 at the time. So it was like weird to have your sister moving away for a year. But it really opened my mind. She lived in France, but just was like, oh wow, people do this. They live abroad, they go different places, and I was just really intrigued by it. And then, of course, and we can get into this later, but my time, in the Peace Corps, which was, eye-opening. And, it's funny when you think about traveling versus living somewhere, it's very different.
Very different.
And it's always an adjustment. And I had to actually make that adjustment when I joined the Foreign Service. But, but Peace Corps was helpful in kind of, making me learn the difference between the two. But I was always, with the Peace Corps experience, and again, we can get into this in greater detail, but it just kind of opened my eyes to coming here, seeing the challenges, how we, the United States or other countries, were helping Africa face those development challenges at the time and even today, and just kind of opened my eyes to a whole new world, and I was interested.
So even back then, did you have aspirations to be a diplomat one day?
Not really. Like most young people, I was interested in international development, really. And I wasn't sure what track. I was actually interested in journalism as well, because my older sister was a journalist. So, you're just, I call it my kids, putting irons in the fire. And so one of the things I did was, I took the Foreign Service test. And because I got to meet some of the diplomats here when I was a Peace Corps volunteer working at the embassy. And one thing led to another.
Yeah, so funny enough, I was going to ask the question, but you've already led into it. So some of the viewers may not know you are familiar with Liberia.
Yeah.
Spent time here in the Peace Corps in Grand Bassa, of all places.
Yeah.
Now, this is going to get interesting. So, Moi?
Well,
there's one more.
bonjour.
See, you're better than me.
I know the greetings.
I have notes.
I know the greetings.
What if, wait?
Oh gosh, you're not.
Deepani. We tried. Mom, I tried.
Yeah.
Mom, I tried. So funny enough, this when I was reading about
Bobasa
you,
uru a little bit. Do way.
much better than me.
Yeah.
So funny enough, when I was reading all about you and your time in the Peace Corps, Grand Bassa, my mother is from, people say Buchanan, but in Buchanan they say Buchanan, from Buchanan.
Yeah, that's right.
And she actually worked in the Peace Corps as an administrative assistant from 84 to 1990.
I feel like this is a surprise.
I know.
Revelation in the interview.
So,
I must have met your mother.
You must have. She gave me some names. She was the administrative assistant supporting the country director from 84 to 90, Wayne Jerkins.
Oh my God, yeah, Wayne, he was a good friend of mine.
Yeah, Ed Christian, Rudy Watkins.
Yeah.
Robert Jackson.
Robert Jackson, of course, was the director when I was there, but I knew Wayne as well.
Yes. So my mother's name was
This
Linda.
is a surprise.
Yeah,
This is like, I feel like this is your life of the old show back in the.
Linda Azam. I don't know if you would remember her.
It
sounds familiar, but yes, you guys crossed paths. So I think that's really, really cool.
So your mom has to, if you ask her where the Peace Corps, because I'm lost in Monrovia today because it's grown, right, a little bit over 30 plus years. And so I'm constantly trying to find landmarks that I knew.
Okay.
And one of them is the Peace Corps headquarters because it's changed.
Right.
It's in a different place now.
So should I ask her where it was?
Yeah, where the address was.
Okay.
So then if I can help it. And then equally, like when I was in Buchanan, like a couple weeks ago, I was trying to find out where I lived and I couldn't. Which is embarrassing.
Yeah,
but
things have definitely changed. So, Mommy, I'll be asking you that a little bit later. We can help us out. But can you talk to us about your time in Peace Corps here?
Sure. It's not an exaggeration to say it was life-changing. I was a kid just out of college, I was 22 maybe. And part of the value of that experience is you get young people over here, but it's really just like, it's unique. And what do I mean by that? It's, very few other countries do what the Peace Corps, what the US does via the Peace Corps, which is just put average Americans together with other countries at a grassroots level.
Right.
You're not like moving and shaking with the government. You're really at the village level. I was at the town level, but also at the village level too, working all throughout Grand Bassa County. And it's just, it's unique in that sense. And I can tell you what always strikes me, and to this day, is when I've met obviously with President Boakai several times already and his senior cabinet, they're all like, oh, I remember my Peace Corps teacher.
Yes.
The impact that it has comes out in strange places. And it's like, but almost all of these people who go on to become, and even if they don't become leaders like President Boakai, of course, but they're just impacted by that experience, as are we.
Yeah.
And I can also say is, one thing I've been struck with is I did a Zoom call last Saturday with what we call returned Peace Corps volunteers from Liberia and Washington, and just was able to talk to them about what my impressions of the country are. And it was just a really moving experience how these people stay involved in Liberia and care about Liberia.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
And leading into that, what are your impressions of Liberia today versus over 30 so years ago? A lot has happened since you left.
89, so whatever, I can't do
So
math.
yeah, you were here when it was the good old days.
Yeah.
Before everything happened.
Yeah.
So what are your impressions?
Yeah, so that's a good way to put it. Although I wouldn't say the good old days because things were tough there and it was very different. I have a lot of impressions and I could go on about this. No, but seriously, there's a lot that's. So I've been here 2 months and some change, and so I've had enough time in Monrovia and traveling outside of Monrovia to Buchanan. I went up to Kakata. I went to Mount Coffee. And so I've had enough time outside of the city to get some impressions. A lot of the same challenges up front, I'll say, are the same. Lack of infrastructure. The fact that the road from the airport is maybe even a little worse than it was in 1980s is hard to deal with, because that's the kind of infrastructure you need. And we could talk about this later, but like if you're going to build tourism, if you're going to, you've got to have roads.
Yes.
If you're going to have investment, you got to have roads. So that's a big challenge, and it remains a challenge, and I get that. And the other thing that's, so on the good side, and I want to get to your point about the good old days. When I was here, it was obviously the late era of Samuel Canyon Doe.
Yeah.
There had been some coup attempts. Obviously, everything changed, obviously in 1990. But, when I was there, the military wasn't what it is today. The military today is light years different
Advanced.
than advanced. Yes,
Great.
absolutely. It's a smaller but much more professional and most importantly, apolitical entity. Whereas then, to come to Buchanan, to Monrovia, depending on the political climate of the time, I'd have to go through 2 or 3 police or military checkpoints.
Yeah. Yes.
And depending on the mood of the soldiers who
Save the day.
man those in their days and their state of mind, they could harass people. They did
Yes,
harass
yeah.
people. So when you don't have that free flow of civilians and frankly everyone is able to travel freely from one place to another, that weighs on a population.
Right.
Obviously. So in that ways, the police and the military right now are much farther ahead, much more apolitical and just professionalized.
Yeah.
And that's a huge sign of progress. And the other thing I'll say, and again, happy to talk to this in greater detail, is, Liberia's come a long way even since 2003. And it's easy to forget that. But they've had 3 successful democratic elections. They've had
Very
2
important.
successful, peaceful transfers of power.
Very
And there are many Western countries who can't
Can
claim
do
the
that.
same.
Yes.
2 former presidents live right here in Liberia.
Yes.
Again, there's not a lot of countries who can say that. So that's real signs of progress.
Yes, yes.
So it's easy to point to all the things that, oh, this is the same, and there are places where that. And I'll just say the other challenges that remain are health and education.
Education,
But
yes. Those are always the pillars.
I know.
But it is a good thing when I say the good old days, you were able to see Liberia
Yeah,
for
yeah.
what it was
Yeah.
before the ruins of the war.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
when I speak to my mom and my
Yeah.
aunts and uncles and they explain, and sometimes you even see photos of what it once was.
Yeah.
What
Yes.
a time.
Yeah.
Some of us, I left during the war. I left in
Yeah.
1990, escaped, went to the US,
Yeah.
not knowing how long I'd be gone.
Yeah.
So I always
So many
consider
stories
you,
like
yeah,
that.
yeah. I consider you all the lucky ones to see what it once was.
Yeah.
But hopefully we'll get there one day.
Yeah.
So what personal experiences or background do you think you can bring to this ambassadorial role that will benefit your mission here?
Well, I do think having prior knowledge of Liberia, and I don't want to overstate my, that I have some, but I had 3 years here as a Peace Corps volunteer, and I'll say the experience that gives you, which is on the grassroots level. Now I unfortunately have to ride around in a big armored vehicle, and I miss that. I do, and my security detail, who are wonderful people and professionals, they know I feel that way. I can't get out and walk around as much as I used to, and I miss that. But just having had that experience, and it gives you a different perspective.
Right. There's a connection.
There's a connection.
There's a
Yeah,
connection.
that's exactly
Yes.
right. There's a connection there, and also it's not an exaggeration to say I feel a very deep personal connection to Liberia. I want to see Liberia succeed from a personal perspective, not just as a professional diplomat. The other thing I would say is we talked about this. I've spent most of my career in the Foreign Service in what we call public diplomacy, which is basically strategic communications and that.
Yeah.
And so that gives you a different people-to-people kind of perspective on things. That I think is helpful in any kind of diplomatic role. One of the things that we have stressed as a professional diplomatic corps, and it's taken a while to get there, is for senior diplomats, they got to get out and meet people. You got to get out and do
Yes.
media. You got to get out, and that's been a real personal crusade of mine.
Yeah, you're doing a great job.
Yeah, well, thanks.
Here we are today.
Yeah.
And I will say that, when the buzz comes of the new ambassador, there's been so much talk about your connection to Liberia. So I think you already are light years
Thanks.
ahead.
Yeah.
You've already got some brownie points with us, so it works out well.
Thanks. Appreciate it.
I want to move on now to, I've read in previous interviews that you want to see Liberia and the economic sector develop more.
Yeah.
And also moving, which I fully agree with this statement, moving the U.S.-Liberia relationship from more of assistance to economic partnership.
Yeah.
So how do you feel the Liberian businesses and investors can contribute to that economic development here
Sure.
in Liberia?
And again, I don't claim any special expertise in this, but thank you. And I actually, I seized the opportunity. I was invited to give the commencement address a couple weeks ago at the University of Liberia, and the acting president, Al Hassan, offered that to me, and I seized it because I wanted to really give a message to young Liberians who were graduating and what their future holds for them. Look, we've invested since 2003 $5 billion in Liberia. That's a significant chunk of change, as we say. Yeah. But I consider that money well invested because Liberia in 2003, if not a failed state, was on the cusp of being a failed state. Its infrastructure was decimated. Its political structure, democratic processes were non-existent. So you had to rebuild almost from scratch.
Yes.
And that's no small thing. And we talked about the fact that they have done that politically, where they've had peaceful, transparent, free, fair elections. And again, 2023's elections, last year's elections, a lot of people didn't have a lot of confidence that Liberia could pull it off, and they did.
They did, and there was a lot of a worry that once
Yeah.
it was declared that
Yeah.
there would be some reprisals or some fight back, and I even was shocked that it was accepted, and
Yes, I agree.
I was so proud of that moment for us as a country.
And huge kudos to the political
Yes.
leaders of the time for
Yes.
doing that, for taking those steps, because they had the country's best
Interest.
long-term interests at heart.
And it was a great time to see everyone working
Right,
together for
right.
the interest of peace for Liberia.
Right. But, I would concede that, over that period of time since 2003, and even frankly prior to that, there's been this relationship based on a dependency. And I struggle with that word because I don't want to, I don't want to overstate it, but I also don't want to deny its existence.
Yes, because it's there.
Because it's there. And now it's how do we take that from, a relationship defined by dependency to one defined by strategic partnership. I think we can get there. And I think that a lot of that needs to be Liberians investing in Liberia.
Yes.
And on multiple fronts. What we've seen here with you today, and we took a tour of this startup business here, is indicative of the future.
Yes.
And it really gives me confidence and optimism about the future. And my message to these graduating students was, my greatest hope is for you to spend your careers in Liberia, investing in Liberia, because it's only through your investment that Liberia will grow to become what I believe it can become, which is self-sustaining, a regional actor and player that its voice can carry far beyond its borders here and be a force of resilience, of
Yes.
democratic hope for the region.
Yes, Ambassador, since a little bit of background about me, I moved back in 2017,
Yeah.
and the message that I pushed on my show since moving back is we are the only ones who can build our country.
Yes.
So unfortunately for us, we've had the Civil War
Yeah.
and other instances that have scattered us across the world. But there is a push for people wanting to come back.
Yep.
There's a push
Yep.
for, and I always look at other countries around the region. You look at Nigeria, you look at
Yeah.
Ghana. These students, they school outside of the country, but they all come back.
Yes.
They all come
Yeah.
back and they enrich their country. So I think
Thank
it
you.
goes along with exactly
Thank
what
you.
you're saying.
Liberia's greatest resource is its people. And I know it has vast natural resources, and that's wonderful as well, but its people are its greatest resource.
Yeah.
And it just needs to invest in those.
So you guys, I've been saying it for 7 years now? You hear it
Yeah,
right
yeah.
here. Come back. Help
Yeah.
us build the country. It's been a great conversation so far. We have so much more to talk about. So stay tuned for part 2 as we get to know Ambassador Mark Tonin. See you soon.
We will.